Oytun Orhan, who's the coordinator of Levant Studies at the Center for Middle East Studies. He joins us now from Ankara. Really good to have you with us, Oytun. Firstly, there's a lot happening in the Syrian capital with regards to the political transition after the fall of the Assad regime. I mentioned there one of the main appointees in the incoming administration, but in your view, how long will it take for there to be a new administration in place in Syria?
Actually, we have a roadmap which was shaped by UN Resolution 2254. So depending on that, there should be elections. Actually, of course, it was implemented or addressed towards the Assad regime. We now have a new situation, but it could be a base for the transition in which the Syrian side had to organize new elections in the 6 months' time. And depending on that, there should be an interim government. And then we will have free elections. And in these free elections, of course, each side of Syrian society and political groups will be joined in that elections, fair and free elections, so that we will have a more inclusive Syrian government at the end of this process. So UN resolution could be a good way for this transition period. Of course, in order to avoid lack of authority and avoid any kind of risks, insecurity, the opposition groups appointed a new interim government. I think this government will lead the country to the new elections, free and fair elections. This is what everybody hopes, actually, including the Turkish side, so that this inclusive government will avoid new instabilities and risks political instabilities in Syria.
Yes, Oytun, we're looking at live pictures now of ongoing celebrations happening in Damascus. We know, though, that there are various opposition groups around the country who, in the different regions, have been fighting against the regime. You're saying that the ultimate aim is for an interim administration to eventually hand over the reins of power to elected representatives. But in that interim administration, are you confident that there will be unity among the various opposition groups?
That is one of the biggest challenges that the opposition will face in the coming period. That is also the same for the states, including Turkey, which supported the opposition forces. That's a big challenge because there is no full unity among the opposition forces. And, of course, the armed groups led this offensive. So, of course, they will try to manipulate or have some share in the power sharing in the coming period. So these are going to be the risks. But, of course, we have also the political opposition, the Syrian National Coalition and also Syrian interim government. They were also acting as opposition entities, political entities. So there are lots of, prominent political figures in Syria and also outside Syria who were fighting for freedom outside Syria, organized and, did a great job in international negotiations, so that all these elements should be included. But we should not forget that, as I said, the armed groups were leading this process. They will try to maybe have a kind of share in this new structure, new power sharing system. But also another problem is this unity among all these factions. But of course, there are some groups which has got superiority among others, so that they will try to, of course, dominate this process. But of course, these actors are going to be also pressured by regional parties and also international community, especially Gulf, Turkey. The new government, even if it is interim government, will need international support. And also, we will going to talk about the reconstruction of Syria. So in that regard, of course, the government, although they have their own plans, will be, open to such, demands from the regional and international communities.
Yes, you mentioned there Turkey's role in all this and in the potential reconstruction of Syria. We know Turkey has very much a vested interest in ensuring a stable transition of power in Syria. It shares a rather long border with northern Syria. But talk to us about the roles that other countries and other powers might play in this new era for Syria. Countries like the United States, Russia, and even Iran. Which countries do you believe will be looking to have a say in this next step for Syria?
Yani, it seems that Iran and Russia are the losers of what happened in Syria. Of course, they lost the Assad regime. They lost their leverage and influence, presence, actual presence on the ground. So I don't think they will have a say. You know, opposition groups and Iran and Russians were fighting since last decade. So I think it is impossible for them to have a say in the future of Syria. For Russians, I think protecting their bases could be a priority. Other than that, I think they cannot interfere for the transition period or for the future of Syria. Apart from that, of course, regional countries, including Turkey. Turkey is like, you know, one of the most important supporters of the opposition forces, and also who, as a country who, you know, protected Idlib area against Russian air attacks and Assad regime. Should have a say, of course, because Turkey was really patient about, you know, supporting the Syrians. Has done a lot in that regard, political-wise, military-wise, and also hosting, you know, millions of Syrians in Turkey and also in the north of Syria. So in that regard, Turkey will and should have a say, of course, in this process. But of course, when it comes to recognition, international legitimacy, reconstruction, you know, funding, you know, in that regard, of course, everybody will have a say. So especially regional countries, especially Gulf, will be interested for the reconstruction process, because Syria issue had become an international issue, a regional problem since it started. So it spreads, unfortunately, instability. So refugee issue, you know, terrorism, radicalism. So in that regard, everybody needs sustainable security and solution in Syria. In that regard, we need reconstruction so that people can return to their homeland, so that we could have a full security and stability in Syria. So, of course, Europe, international community, US has already have a role not only in the reconstruction process, but also they are still on the ground in the east of Syria, so that there need to be negotiations, of course, with the US side. So, I mean, we could say that mainly Turkey, US seems to be the leading powers. But of course, we should not also see that the Israeli side is also trying to make use of this, you know, lack of authority now, the current situation in Syria. So they are also trying to expand their occupation in the south, so that they are not going to have a say, but the Israeli role will be very effective in this process, of course.
Okay, Oytun, Orhan, we will have to leave it there. But thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it.